How do you reason with the unreasonable? How do you come to some kind of agreement with those who are highly disagreeable? And how do you negotiate with selfish? In fact, how do you convince the deluded? Or how do you get through to those who at times seem determined to play stupid? Well, these are questions I was asking during a recent live stream where I was discussing staying grounded in reality and managing your boundaries and not engaging with narcissistic people on their terms. Now, following that, I thought it might be interesting to look at what happens to a narcissist internally whenever someone does start to show self-confidence, speaks with clarity, and enforces their boundaries. And none of that narcissistic person's usual tactics work. In other words, they've lost control. Well, to begin with, it is worth remembering that pretty much everything about a narcissist is fake. Many of their behaviours are aimed at protecting a false and fragile sense of self. In fact, they need others to validate that they are superior, they're flawless, they're deserving of special attention and special treatment. But the only way they can get that is through controlling and manipulating others to collude with their fantasies, because there's really little to nothing based in reality. So whenever someone does start to see through their false facade and will no longer collude with the delusions of grandeur or give them the attention that they crave, what we might see is something of an identity crisis, and they can begin to lose control of themselves as well. And I think the first thing a narcissist will experience is denial. Now, not just denial in the sense that they feign confusion or innocence, because the denial is more internal. They reject anything that contradicts their version of themselves. In a word, they deny reality. So whenever someone does begin to assert themselves and answers back with facts and won't play along with their games, their sense of self can begin to crumble. So they have to reject the idea that they've done anything wrong, because that would mean having to face themselves honestly, and that might be too painful. And what we often see are desperate attempts to regain some kind of control, just to defend their fragile sense of self. And this is one of the reasons why you're often met with deflection and crazy sideshows whenever you try to explain the impact of their behaviour. But they'll convince themselves and try to convince you that maybe this isn't real or this is only temporary, because there's something else going on with you and you'll come round soon. Things will go back to the way they were. But the more you defy them, well, they might actually start to believe that someone has turned you against them. They'll start to look for someone to blame, be that your friends, your family, even your therapist. It will be anyone but them. In fact, one of the reasons narcissistic people isolate their targets from their social support network is they fear others seeing what's going on and saying something. So whenever someone does begin to break away, that's what they believe might have happened. Because they had control over you and they think someone else now has control over you and has poisoned you against them. Because there's no way you could be thinking and doing these things all by yourself. Now, an example would be someone I knew many years ago who had a difficult relationship with her narcissistic mother. And whenever she decided to go no contact, well, the mother texted me saying her daughter wasn't talking to her, but demanding to know what I'd said to her. Now, I later found out she'd sent the same kind of message to other people in her daughter's friendship group. She was really looking for a culprit, because the daughter cutting contact had nothing to do with her own bad behaviour. Secondly, we see fear. Whenever they see someone is serious about telling them no and won't play their games, that's when the fear can kick in. And fear for different reasons. Because narcissistic people need an audience. They need constant attention. This is often referred to as narcissistic supply. And they depend on other people for this supply because they can't give it to themselves. So the thought of losing a source of supply can bring up fear. Now, there is something of an irony in how they need you more than you need them, and yet they behave as if they're doing you a favour by allowing you to be in their company. But the more confident and determined they see someone, especially if there's no anger, urgency, or desperation in them, then the fear rises, because they fear being irrelevant. And when their manipulation and gaslighting isn't working, this can bring up a sense of powerlessness. They fear being nothing, being alone, and whenever people stop feeding them attention, they're not getting what they need to function. Also, if they have no control over someone, they might not have control over who they're talking to. So there can be a fear of being exposed for their actions and their behaviour. And this fear can bring up panic and acts of desperation. Now, they can swing between insults, promises to change, and threats. In fact, there could be threats of consequences if you don't get back in line, do as you're told. There could be threats to expose your secrets to others. There could be bribery. For example, offering to take you on a nice holiday, but you turn the offer down, you're not interested. And they go ahead and book it anyway, because they expect you to give in, because that's what you always did up until now. But when you don't give in and you don't go on that holiday, you might face guilt trips, insults, and accusations of being ungrateful for not wanting something you refused in the first place. Next, they'll try to rationalize what's going on with you because there is clearly something wrong with you. Maybe you've got problems at work, you've got historical issues with your family, or what's going on with you is all rooted in your childhood because it has nothing to do with them. And they'll speak to others, tell them about how they're worried about you, but also about how mean and irrational you're behaving. And thanks to the internet, they might even try to analyse you by watching YouTube videos or searching online for anything they can diagnose you with, and then present you with their findings. Look at this, you have attachment issues, or it says here you're avoidant. Or according to this 10-minute video, you're a narcissist. The guy in the video is an expert, by the way. They will try to convince you there is something wrong with you because their tactics aren't working, because that's the only possible explanation for why you don't want to be treated like crap anymore. Number 4, we often see a change in tactics, and the more desperate they feel, the more erratic they can become. And the tactics are often poorly thought out and reactive. They can swing from promises of a wonderful future to bizarre accusations of conspiring against them. But regardless of the tactic, they are all aimed at provoking some kind of emotional reaction, trying to provoke any kind of engagement. Because they need you to keep defending yourself, explaining yourself, to keep arguing. They fear losing the engagement because bad attention is better than none at all. Your engagement, positive or negative, feeds them. And they'll show exaggerated upset, accuse you of betrayal. They'll show you an exaggerated false confidence, pretend they don't care, which can very quickly turn to outrage whenever you show you don't care either. They might even make threats of harming themselves or harming other people. But in the early stages of breaking away, what you often find is due to their fear of losing your engagement, the less you react, the more the provocation increases. Which leads me on to number 5. Whenever you don't react the way they want you to, this can lead to frustration, which can lead to anger. How dare you refuse them? They are entitled to your compliance. And they can become very vindictive, because in their minds you have hurt them, betrayed them, and they believe they are entitled to some kind of revenge. They believe their anger, their desperation, gives them some kind of moral immunity. So anything they do to hurt or punish you is your fault. You made them do it. They don't want you to move on and thrive. They don't want you to have any kind of happiness unless it's on their terms. But usually, because of their own emptiness and shame, they want you to spend the rest of your days regretting the pain that you caused them. And that pain, by the way, was probably caused by you saying no or not wanting to play their rigged games anymore. And they'll try to attack your reputation, your social support network. In some cases, they might even contact your place of work. As the expression goes, when they can't control you anymore, they'll try to control how others see you. Now, even though it can be awful, even painful and frightening to be on the wrong end of narcissistic vindictiveness, many of their revenge tactics are badly thought out, petty and poorly delivered. More often than not, they end up getting caught. Number 6 is a desperate need to try to keep you destabilized. Narcissists generally control others through psychological and emotional manipulation, through getting people to doubt their own perceptions, their own memory, and their own reality. And they do this through gaslighting. So again, whenever someone is able to stay grounded and trust their own perceptions, there can be an increase in ways to try to get them to doubt themselves. They might even change tack and try and be a little bit more subtle. For instance, they might ask questions like, what about the time you were wrong about this? Or what about the time you did that? And they'll try to rewrite history. They might even try to use others to triangulate you. But the destabilizing works on different levels in the sense that they're trying to keep you off balance, plant seeds of doubt in your head. But it's not just aimed at trying to punish you, but also to try and reinforce their own delusions. But ultimately, it's about trying to get you to engage with them on their terms, by maybe trying to explain or justify yourself, even if it is through third parties. Next, whenever a narcissist is losing control over someone because of their desperate need for attention, sympathy, and validation, among other things, they'll start to tell other people their version of you and what happened. For instance, how badly you treated them, how they gave you everything and you dumped them, how you are the narcissist. They engage in what's commonly referred to as a smear campaign, and they're really rewriting the relationship into a version which not only suits them, but can also preempt anything that you might have to say about them. Remember, they fear being exposed. They'll claim you are the angry, vindictive one, so anything you say to other people might come across as if you're just being bitter. And they'll tell tales to elicit questions, sympathy, and attention from other people. And the more people they tell, in their mind, the more true they think it becomes. Lastly, whenever they see you not engaging in their drama, feeding their ego, or meeting their need for attention, well, just like a parasite, they'll discard you and go look for a new host, a new supply, someone new to feed off. Remember, they can't be alone. Narcissism cannot function without an audience, without a supply. As an expression I once heard was, no one falls in love quicker than a narcissist with no supply. So to summarize, narcissistic people live in their own preferred version of reality where they are always superior and entitled to special attention and treatment. Other people are only there for their benefit. But whenever you refuse to participate in their delusions and fantasies, whenever you stop trying to help them bring out the best in them, whenever you refuse to give them any attention, you don't argue or explain yourself, well, this can bring up a lot of things like confusion, denial, fear, and anger. And they will do whatever they have to try to regain some kind of control. Their behaviours are largely aimed at preventing them from having to admit to themselves they lost. So to summarize the original questions, how do you win against a narcissist? Especially whenever their games are all rigged in their favour. Well, you win by not playing them at all. You realise the only power they ever had over you was through deception, through exploiting your kindness, your patience, compassion, and your hope that someday they would deliver on their false promises. You win by realising you don't need their approval, you never did, and that they needed you more than you needed them. Now, as always, there are many other things I could have mentioned, such as narcissistic rage to punish and intimidate, and narcissistic collapse, which can often look like a shame-based depression. But if there's anything you might like to add, please feel free to use the comments section. There are some interesting conversations start from these videos. But if you find this topic to be interesting, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm Darren Magee, and until next time, thanks for watching.